Hi everyone, welcome to our third session of the day. I'm joined live here by Joe David, CEO of Elementos, a ASX-listed tin exploration company with projects in both Spain and Australia. Thanks for joining me, Joe.
Thank you very much, James, for having me.
No problem. So Joe is a mining engineer and senior executive with a successful track record of developments and deals in mining, construction, and finance. His career has spanned several executive roles with private equity and listed companies, as well as running his own consulting group. He's managed the development of natural resources projects, bankable feasibility studies, exploration and metallurgical programs, project financing, corporate finance advisory, corporate strategy, and mergers and acquisitions. That's quite a lot, Joe.
Sounds very impressive, doesn't it?
It does indeed. So for those who haven't heard of Elementos before, why don't you give us a quick intro to the company?
Yeah, sure. So we're an ASX listed company, as you said, spun out of Oropesa, who some people might follow from many, many years ago. We first picked up our Tasmanian asset about 7 years ago and went through the path of looking into sort of remining the old tailings dam. It was an old operating underground mine there before moving, especially in the low tin price environment, moving into looking at other assets around the world. And certainly that's when we came across the Oropesa project in Spain and managed to acquire that when the tin price was quite depressed. And certainly that's our major flagship project right now.
Yeah, I mean, so Elementos acquired the project in 2019 from Eurotin. What attracted you to the project and to Spain as a mining region? Because it's not somewhere where we see a lot of tin mining at the moment.
No, certainly. There's not a lot of tin mines. There's one producing a little bit of tin up in the north right now, but certainly it does a lot of base metals mining, as you'd be aware, certainly a lot of copper and through the pyrite belt. So certainly it is a mature mining country, but certainly tin doesn't show up in a lot of places. We've obviously hit a nice little project, Oropesa, where there's a very nice tin deposit, and very happy to acquire that in 2019. I guess having developed or attempted to develop our Tasmanian project in a low tin environment for a few years, we understood the tin market pretty closely, and we certainly knew what we were chasing when we went out there looking for another larger project. We certainly didn't want to go like virgin exploring. We definitely wanted to find a project that already had a JORC compliant resource on it, and certainly one that had some decent grades. So we came across Eurotin, which was holding the asset, which is a TSX listed company, and we managed to acquire the project from them in scrip. They took about 40% of our company during that merger. But it was an asset level merger. They continued to exist on the TSX. And certainly from that point on, we've gone from strength to strength in developing the project. As I said, we definitely chased a project with a resource, and that one had a 12.5 million tonne resource at the time with a 0.5% tin. What else attracted us to that project specifically was that not only did it have that resource, but it certainly had some additional exploration potential. And our recent drill campaign and recent mineral resource upgrade certainly showed we were correct there with a 50% increase, but we can talk about that more later. Additionally, the mineralization is hosted in like a soft rock sandstone. Mostly of it's hosted within the sandstone units, which is fantastic, good for obviously the mining costs, keep the mining costs low, rather than some of the other projects that sit within the granites and the harder rocks. It is cassiterite. It's 99.5% cassiterite deposit. So certainly, that is known in tin, as you guys are well aware, as one of the most economic mineralization types. It is an open cut deposit, and as Anthony said at AfriTin, what do you say? 6% of projects around the world open cut or can be mined from surface. So certainly identifying one of them was critical to us. And our deposit, with the studies we've done up to date, show that goes down to a depth of about 220 metres at its deepest point, with an average about 150 metres. So very much open pittable. As you said, what attracted us to Spain? As you said, it's not necessarily known as a tin destination, but there are certainly some pretty sophisticated and big mining operations, especially in the Andalusia region in the south of Spain. First Quantum's down there mining the Cobres Las Cruces mine, Rio Tinto copper mine, which, as we know, has been mined since Roman times, currently mined by Atalaya Mining. And what, as an Australian company, what's been great for us, and certainly it's not common for Australian companies to be operating in the south of Spain, is Sandfire Resources, which is a big $2 billion Australian company, just recently bought into the Matza mining complex in southern Spain, about 60 kilometres away from our deposit. So certainly great having another big Australian miner mining close by to us, and certainly gives a lot of support to the Australian investors. Other than that, we're big fans of strategic metals in Europe. Europe's obviously, there's a lot of focus right now on delivering into the European supply chain, and we identified from a few years ago that getting a tin deposit within the EU would be a great advantage to servicing that demand.
Yeah, really interesting. You mentioned there that one of the things that attracted you to Oropesa was the existing resource, and you mentioned that you've recently upgraded that resource further. So what's the resource looking like now?
Yes, ever since we acquired the project, we had effectively planned a drill program, and we completed that this year. It was about a 46-hole drill campaign, but we didn't just use the drill campaign. We actually relogged all the historic holes, and certainly identified some more opportunities through that process. So it was about a 2-year process from start to finish. And yeah, just last month, we finally got our mineral resource estimate out, which is a fantastic goal for the company. And we've increased the total resource by 50%. We're up at 19 million tonnes at 0.4% tin, which is about 75,000 tonnes of contained tin metal. But we've also announced we're going into a definitive feasibility study. So the key for us is to have majority of those tonnes upgraded to the higher levels of geological confidence, those being the measured and indicated categories. And we now have 88% of our resource sitting up in the measured and indicated categories, and that the measured and indicated resources went up 78% from the previous mineral resource estimate. Also key was during that drill campaign, we identified and really got the detail around some shallow resource. So previously we had about 1.37 million tonnes of our resource within 100 metres of the surface level. We now have about 5 million tonnes of resource close to surface. Clearly, minerals close to surface in an open cut mine means they're more economic, although I can't say too much about that with my JORC compliance hat off and my listing rules, but effectively we're very confident when we get the opportunity to redo the mine planning, we'll be able to show that a lot more tonnes are coming out early and cheaper.
Yeah, and I know that there's already been quite a bit of work done at Oropesa. I understand that you've already done some pilot scale metallurgical tests. I mean, what's that looking like from a processing side of things? Yeah,
definitely. So as you said, when we acquired the project, there'd already been about 1.5 tons of bulk sample gone through the pilot plant. Subsequent to us taking control, we did a 3-ton bulk sample. We actually sent it up through Germany through the TOMRA facilities. So we've done ore sorting on that and got some fantastic results. So that then went into Cornwall to the Wardell Armstrong laboratories, and we're currently just in the final stages doing our metallurgical test work on the bulk sample. So the key result that we want out of that is to finalise our flow sheet. Our flow sheet is pretty standard tin gravity up to tin gravity circuit. We also have a tin flotation circuit off the back of that for some of the final materials. So we're well on our way to completing that piece of work, but I can't give any results because we haven't released them to the ASX yet. I'd love to.
Of course, yeah. And I guess all of that is going to be wrapped into the DFS. I mean, when can people expect more information from that?
Yes, certainly. So actually on the ASX this morning release, we're actually based on 2 factors, based on obviously the increase in the tin price. Since we did our last scoping study, we did it under $20,000 per tonne. Obviously we're now, touching the $40,000 per tonne. That has when you're dealing with an open pit, that certainly has the opportunity to change the pit shells we're using. So we're actually doing an optimization study, which is effectively redoing our scoping studies based on that and our 50% upgrade in our mineral resource. So we've announced to the market, we're currently re-evaluating the scale and the size of Oropesa. We're just commencing that process. But that is a parallel process to our DFS. So effectively, as you said, the other technical substreams that are feeding into our DFS, our metallurgy, our geotech, which we're just finishing on site. We're just drilling our 10th hole right now. We've also got geohydrology happening, which is the groundwater studies, number of other sub-programs. So effectively, all that data will be back with us by the end of Q1 next year, which really kicks us up into the technical streams of the DFS, into the final mine planning phases, as well as tendering out our process plant works. So effectively, that happens at Q1. This optimization study will have the results to the market before the end of Q1, which means that we'll get our basis design for our DFS, and on we go. The goal of that DFS is to complete that by the end of next year, end of 2022.
Great. So some results very soon. I just had a question in here from the audience, talking about the cassiterite that you find in Oropesa. So they're saying that from their understanding, the cassiterite was quite fine previously. Did you find coarser cassiterite in the resource expansion?
We've certainly so there is some fine cassiterite. That's true, but there's certainly a lot of coarse cassiterite as well. And I guess, as I flagged in our metallurgical flow sheet, a vast majority and a lot of our recovery does come out of the gravity circuit, and there is a portion, and as I say, I won't say too much to our met results come out, that do go through the sub 35 microns that goes into that flotation circuit. So we do have a little bit of a combination of both, but certainly we're getting some great results through the flotation circuit as well. So, whilst it does add a little bit of cost to the processing, we think it's far offset by the cheap mining that we have with our open pit deposit.
Sure, and I guess you can't answer the second part of that question, which is, are there any, test results on the recovery from that? I guess that's part of the current study.
Yeah, not from the current phase. There certainly is from the previous 1 tonne phase, and we had about a 74% recovery overall in the previous work, and that was the basis of the scoping study we put out in May 2020. So feel free to have a look at our ASX releases regarding the recovery data in that study.
Great. And I mentioned at the beginning that you guys also own a project in Australia, and you mentioned in Tasmania. So are there any recent developments with that project?
Yeah, there is, most certainly. So we kicked off a strategic review there. So the thing with that asset is initially purchased. It was an old operating tin mine until 1986 by Aberfoyle Resources. It's still a very good looking, really good geotech, held up really nicely tin mine. With a pretty decent looking resource of, got this in front of me, 7.5 million tonnes and 0.75% tin, and it's got some good copper credits. So that sits across 3 sub areas. Some of that's included in the tailings dam, and then we have the old underground mine, of which the top 150 metres has the opportunity to be open pitted. So effectively, we're just going through the process of trying to put those 3 resources together and work out exactly how they'd stack up in a mine plan. But we've also announced that we're doing 5 holes. Well, we've announced 4. I can announce tonight that we're now doing 5 holes down in Tasmania. We've got another prospective zone that we've identified. And if we can get mineralisation along those, it's got some very good data supporting that, and we've put that out in previous presentations. We can just get a little bit more mine life, and certainly the story becomes a lot clearer for us, and we'd really have a really nice looking second development on hand to come online probably a year or 2 after Oropesa.
Yeah, and I guess the focus right now is get Oropesa online first, and anything else is a bonus, right?
Absolutely. Oropesa is our number 1 focus, and all efforts of the company are there, and obviously the Tasmania asset, it'll be nice, but a couple more bits of data to come in on that one first.
Great. And in terms of what the company's doing in ESG, obviously that's a big part of investment right now. So what's Elementos doing to keep up with those trends?
Yes, certainly. So it's impossible to miss right now, and certainly and we have desire to be great corporate citizens. And I think the ESG for us is really just putting the wording behind a lot of the actions we were already doing. So effectively, in our last annual report, we just put out our first positioning statement. We're not rushing into this in terms of making statements or signing up to anybody's specific reporting protocols. We still think it's a work in progress. However, we're certainly in the phase of still discovering exactly what of the suite of reporting opportunities we can report against. But I thought what we really wanted to do is, especially as we go through our development phase on these two assets and our studies, is really identify some of the key things that we would be looking at. So a few of the things we've identified that we definitely look at was maximising the extraction of the contained resource. So just certainly not going in and high grade deposits, making sure we're not only pulling out the high grade material, but the lower grade material that if you don't mine it at that point, it will probably never be mined. So being efficient with the resources that the Earth's given us, certainly minimising the ecological footprint. And, you know, at Oropesa, we're already looking at in-pit waste dumps rather than external. And in the Tasmanian asset, we're looking at opportunities to backfill some of the old underground mine with our tailings from processing. So that, along with greenhouse gas emission reduction through alternative energy sources. Luckily, both areas we work in have high proportions of green energy in their networks, but we're certainly looking at other opportunities to minimise our carbon footprint. Minimising tailings storage facilities where we can, water recovery, water recycling. So some very key opportunities there that we were already looking at, but we certainly documented them in our annual report and really want to show people that it's at the forefront of everything we do, from the design stage through to operations.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, really, complete plan there.
Thank you. And a work in progress.
Of course. We've had another question in, Joe, from the audience that asks that, due to the increase in resources, is the suggestion that at Oropesa you're going to have a higher production rate, a higher throughput rate than what was detailed in the scoping study?
I'll be very careful with how I answer this one, and feel free to look at my ASX release I put out this morning in Australia. We are looking at exactly that. Can we be increasing the mining rate, the processing rate, and obviously the associated infrastructure? We're very careful to say we're making no commitments that we will be increasing. Worst case, we'll stay with the current scale of the project, but certainly we think there's some very key drivers that mean for our shareholders right now, we have to look at this opportunity. There would be an increase in CapEx, but it's fair to say on the mining side, there's probably certainly a chance to reduce the OpEx through to the shallowness of some of that resource. So there will be an increase in CapEx, but shouldn't be proportional to the increase of the throughput.
Great. Yeah. I mean, that sounds very positive. I think that's what everyone wants to hear from a mine.
Absolutely. No, we've had some really fundamental wins in recently.
Great. So I think that's all the questions we have today, Joe. Thanks very much for joining us today and for telling us more about Elementos. It's always interesting to hear about these developments that are going on, and I know that people are always looking for new tin supply in Europe. Definitely is a hot topic right now. So thanks again. And for everyone else in the audience, we're going to take a short 15-minute break here. Feel free to use the lounge to chat with anyone at the event, and also check out the booths to go and see more information about any of these companies. As Joe mentioned, there is a link there to all of Elementos' recent ASX announcements. So, Joe, thanks very much once again, and we'll take a short break now.
Thank you, everybody.